Alright, ladies and gentlemen, on my video, Matthew's Nation of Insanity, FF has a comment. He's confused about how these things are going to work, how the world works. He says, so the government doesn't have a profit motive. He's referring to my statement that I don't want the government to be in business making profits or trying to make profits. I want to give the government a budget, and I want them to operate on that budget. I don't want them to try to make extra money because they're the guys with guns. So I want them to take the money that we give them and spend that and no more. I don't want them to try to get any money any other way. So that's just what I'm saying, buddy, FF. Whether you can grasp that or not, I don't know. But I'm saying that we should voluntarily pay our government an amount that we as the citizens see fit. It's important that we have voluntary contributions to the government instead of forced taxation, because it's a good way of voting on the government's activities. If we like what the government is doing, then we will pay. Now, it occurs to me that that might not be the happiest world, but this is going to be a world where the government really doesn't have much power. I can imagine, it's possible for me to imagine, some really big company paying a lot of money into the government, or a group of big companies paying for the government, and not really needing the citizenry to pay. You might say, oh, well, that's good, because then the citizenry are getting a free ride, right? But I would say, well, that's potentially bad, because then the citizenry can't stop their payments to the government and starve the government of funds and change the government's activities. You see, if the people control the government through their funding, then when they stop sending money, that's going to have some effect on the government. If you can't stop sending money because it's not voluntary, that's a problem. And if they don't need your money because the big corporations are sending so much money, that's a problem. And that's the situation the United States is in today. About 52% of the lower half, 52% of people, the lower 52%, don't pay taxes in America. The upper 48% pay all the taxes. That's the situation we're in. Now, they don't give a flying F what the lower people think, because they're not paying anything. They're getting money. They're living off the teat. Everybody who makes less than like $70,000 or $80,000 a year pays virtually no taxes in America, because after you add up all the goodies and all the nonsense you get back, you pay virtually no taxes. Now, we could argue about the efficiency of these services and stuff, but we are in a situation that I don't know if there's a way to solve it in the current structure. What we're going to have to do is take away the government's power to regulate commerce. That's the clause in the U.S. Constitution that causes the problems. The government should not have the power to make laws about the economy, inside the economy. And the reason for this is because the government is the single power, the monopoly, and it has the power of force. Now, all the other companies and stuff, all the people, all the citizens have to deal with each other voluntarily. But the government does not have to get the voluntary consent of the people. It could just order them around through whatever means, taxes or a law or whatever. So we've got to stop or limit the government's power to do that. So, if that's not clear, now I know how clear, I know that it's useless with these guys. LeftyPhilosophy, for example, did some sort of reply to me where I'm talking about the senses, and I said, how would we know that the senses are broken? How would we know about color blindness? How would we know about a situation when the senses are not valid unless they were valid? They must be valid sometimes. There must be some validity to them, or else we would never know. And his reply to this was, well, people can be born colorblind. So lefty philosophy is just about as retarded as they come. Jesus Christ. All right, back to this guy, FF, who's his buddy. So there we go. That's the government. It does not have a profit motive, and it should not. And it should be the guys with guns. It should be the guys that we call when we need somebody to do something with guns, and they should operate on a budget that we give them. Right now, they kind of operate on a budget that we vote for them. It's not the same in other countries as America. We have a little more control over it in America. But, like I said, the big companies and the rich people are paying the bill. The poor people don't have much say. Nobody really cares what they say because they're not paying anything for it. So that might be a problem if the government were smaller. And maybe even if it were illegal for anybody to give to the government except private citizens. That would be an interesting system. We might need to think about that system. Okay. But the thing is, it wouldn't matter whether big corporations gave to the government or not in a free economy where the government didn't have the power to interfere in the economy. Right? It just wouldn't matter. You could give a politician all kinds of money, but he has no power to make any laws that make any difference in the economy. All he can do is avenge murder and robbery and rape. You know, that's his only powers. So, okay. So, the government doesn't have a profit motive? No, they don't have a profit motive. People in the government have a profit motive. No, they don't have a profit motive. Voters, politicians, lobbyists, and bureaucrats all have rational self-interest. What is rational self-interest? I don't know what you mean by it, but when you are using a gun to obtain what you're trying to obtain, then you're not a businessman. Okay, there's a big pile of stolen money, he says. There's a big pile of guns that can be used to get more money. Okay, so I've just addressed that. Rewind. If you want me to address that, just rewind and listen to it in the context of that. Then he says, so are you saying we should expect these people to be altruists and go against Ayn Rand's teachings? No, the government's not going to be altruistic. Nobody's ever going to be altruistic except if you commit suicide and jump off a bridge. Everybody else is doing something for themselves, okay? I'm not worried about that. What I want to do is stop the government from having the power to do that by removing their power to regulate commerce and their power to tax and their power to build post offices and roads. And once we take away those powers, everything will be much, much better. Much better. An order of magnitude better. He says, or does your constitution mitigate these profit motives through checks and balances? I've addressed that. So, I'm guessing you think it's the last one, but one, it hasn't worked, right? I'm not necessarily defending the Constitution of the United States. I mean, it's the greatest document on the planet today. It's worked. It's worked very well. It's just not perfect. So I'm not necessarily defending it. I'm defending some version of it. All right? He says, what ultimately enforces the Constitution, if not the belief in it by contemporary people? Yeah, if people don't believe in it, it'll disappear. And we simply, will allow the Supreme Court to make decisions that are stupid. The Supreme Court will look at the way people are voting and think this is what the people want, and will destroy the Constitution. We've already done it. So, ultimately enforces the Constitution is the belief in it by contemporary people. So I'm saying, yeah, people have to believe in it, it's going to fall apart. And then he says, which is exactly how Matt Sand's police agreement works. He's the guy, or peace agreement, pardon me. He's the guy who wants everybody to agree on whatever. And then he'll enforce it by law once a sufficient number of people agree. So let's just have laws, Matt. Now, so if the Constitution could fail in this way, that's what I think of your peace agreement. Start with the Constitution. It's just junk. Your peace agreement's junk. Start with the Constitution. Okay, what system could you devise which has more checks and balances than the system of free market capitalism? Well, free market capitalism happens inside of a geographic region where people aren't allowed to use physical force, and where anyone who does use physical force quickly goes to jail. Now, how do we get that region where there's no physical force? It's not magical. We have to have men with guns, ready to, at the drop of a hat. We have to have men with guns walking up and down all of our streets, all of the time, day and night. We have to have men with guns available at a phone call, at the notice. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes is way, way too long for them to show up. Only out in the countryside would you expect that. Or in Vegas, 45 minutes later, in Vegas they'll drive by, a cop will drive by when you call 911. If they don't see anything going on, they'll just go on their way. So, normally, in the civilized areas in our society, 5 minutes will get you a man with a gun. A phone call, right? Normally. And there's that lady that died in New York City on the street. So don't bring her up. Katie, whatever. Okay? Yeah, true. It happens. So when you hear somebody screaming, remember her and make the phone call yourself. Go call 911, alright? Okay. The free market occurs underneath this system where there's no physical force. Now, if you want to do away with that system of physical force and protection and think that you're still going to have some free market, you're insane. You're absolutely insane, and you don't know how to think, and you don't know history, and you're insane. You're like, your IQ must be 85 or less. You're not going to have a stock market when you do away with the United States government. How's the stock market in Syria? It's pretty nice. How's the stock market in Russia, for that matter? Pretty nice. Russia's got a nice stock market over there. Give me a break. You're not going to have an advanced stock market. You're not going to have any kind of stock market without a free country where people aren't allowed to use physical force. You're just going to have a bunch of thugs running around taking stuff from everybody. You're not going to have a buildup of value. You're just going to have robbery. Everywhere robbery. Like they've got in Russia. That's all you're going to have with your junk. So you're not going to have any checks and balances, and you're not going to have a free market. You're going to be jealous of the United States, and you're going to say, how does the United States get a free market? Because we banish the use of physical force. How do they get rid of physical force? Well, let me give you a hint. Not with unicorns and la-di-da agreements, okay? We get rid of the use of physical force by getting men with guns to walk around all the time and enforce laws. Now, if that blows your hippie noodle, it blows your hippie noodle. But that's how we get rid of the use of physical force. Okay, he says, number 4, monopolies can never be fully accountable because there's nothing to directly compare them to. I don't know what you mean by monopoly, but mono means one and pole means power. And the only thing that has one singular power is the state. The only monopoly that exists is the state. If you try to talk about economic monopolies, it just doesn't make sense. The state can create economic monopolies. The state can say, nobody can open an electric plant except Con Edison. And then Con Edison is the electric plant company. But the state is the one that has to prevent people from opening electric facilities. The state is the one that has to prevent people from coining money, because otherwise some guy is going to buy a bunch of silver bars and he's going to start coining silver coins in his garage and spending them at stores, and stores are going to take them because it's silver, so they're going to take them, and the government's going to have to go arrest the guy. The state has to do it. The state has to enforce these laws. Okay? So your idea of a monopoly, Apple can't get a monopoly on iPhone sales because not everyone wants to pay that much, so somebody's going to buy a cheaper phone. The only way they could get a 100% monopoly is to make it illegal for you to buy anything besides the iPhone. That's the only way they could get a monopoly, and that would require action of the state. Mono means one. Polis is from Greek meaning power or the state. Single power, the power of the state. Monopoly means state power. Okay? Monopolies don't occur in the free economy. Okay? They never have, they never will, and if you get a monopoly in the free economy and you push your price up too high, people will start using other things. Whatever it is. If your price of beer goes too high, people start drinking vodka and wine. If your price of vodka goes too high, people start drinking beer. If your price of diamonds go too high, people start giving each other sapphires and other kinds of jewels. If your price of labor goes too high, people will invent robots. If the price of anything goes too high, people will find a workaround. Or they'll use something else. Okay? Monopoly is impossible. The only source of monopoly is the government. Only the government has single power. Monopolis. Singular power. Okay? Only the government has that. So if you're afraid of monopolies, then just get the government out of whatever area you don't want to have monopolies in. Now, as far as physical force goes, I don't want people competing with physical force. I want there to be a monopoly on physical force. And I want those guys to be unallowed, for it to be illegal for them to seek a profit. They're not allowed to sell, they're not allowed to trade, and the only thing they can buy is what they absolutely need to do the job that we've written down on paper that they're doing. That's the way I would do it. And we've gotten pretty much all the way there with the Constitution of the United States. They only messed up a few things they didn't understand. So, it's a pretty good system. So, that's monopolies for you. Monopolies can never be fully accountable because there's nothing to directly compare them to. Alright, so that sentence doesn't make sense. I don't know what you mean by monopolies. You don't know what you mean by monopolies. Monopoly means government. Okay. And whether it's Matt's society or your objectivist state, they remain unobservable. And we have no way of measuring how much extraneous nonsense is prevented and how much is created by today's system and how it compares. Alright, so I read that last bit just for public record, just so you know that I'm not leaving anything out and that it was nonsense. Well, thank you, FF. There's my explanation to you of what we should do about monopolies and what we should do about government power and whether or not the government should be after a profit. If you like what I'm doing, ladies and gentlemen, throw me $5 or $10 a month on Patreon, and I may do something like a monthly Q&A for Patreoners, something like that. Right now, I'm not really thinking what should I do and how should I make it a permanent thing, because I need $600 to $800 a month to make it a permanent thing, and I'm at $100 a month. So if a month from now I'm at $200 a month, then I'm just going to shut it down and go back to my other job. So if you think this is important, you don't have very long. I don't have very long. I have to be doing a job of some kind. So do you want me here doing this? Should I keep doing this and try to do these interviews and stuff and videos and destroy Sam Harris? Should I keep doing this and my body of work keep growing and growing? Or should I go do some very easy job driving luxury cars? It's up to you guys. I saw Charles too with his $1,500 Patreon, and I said, well, if the objectivists will support me, then I'll get online and I'll be Rand's Pitbull. But I'm not going to do it for $100 or $200 for a month. And neither would you, ladies and gentlemen. None of you would put this type of effort in for $200 a month. And my Google has been, my YouTube has been demonetized, so I can't get ad revenue anymore. And I can't sell my videos on YouTube, which I used to have little buttons and people could buy them. That's all gone. So it's up to the objectivist community now. And I don't know that you guys want to support it. But if you do want to support me, now's your chance. You've got 30 days left or something like that to get me up to some amount where I think that this is reasonable and I should do this with my time. So get to that Patreon, guys.